Good evening. My name is Bernie Lenahan. I'm the Vice President of Finance here at Union County College. Before we start, I'd like to introduce George Stevens, who's going to come up and lead us in a Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty, and justice for all.
Thank you, George. George is a multimedia student in that program. Again, I want to welcome you to Union County College, where we're proud to be one of 1,200 community colleges nationwide. We welcome to Union anyone who aspires to improve their life through higher education. Our mission, transforming our community one student at a time, takes shape through our approximate 10,000 credit students enrolled in 51 programs, including 8 health science programs and a robust honors program. In addition, the college fulfills its mission through its non-credit programs, such as the college's Center for Economic Development Workforce, which has consistently earned an excellent performance rating from its partners in the state. This past week, the college had its spring graduation, which represented the largest number of graduates in the school's history. And over the last 5 years, the college has tripled its graduation rate. Enough about us. Now, on behalf of the Union County College Board of Trustees and Governors, our president, Dr. Margaret M. McMiniman, and the entire Union County College community, it's my pleasure to introduce Congressman Leonard Lance, representing New Jersey's 7th Congressional District. Congressman Lance.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lenahan, and my thanks to Union County College for being our host this evening. New Jersey has a very fine system of county colleges, and the reason we are holding the town hall meeting here this afternoon is to accommodate constituents in the eastern portion of the district, in suburban Union County and in Essex County. Before I begin, I would like to note the passing of our Lieutenant Governor's mother. Kim Godano's mother, Mary Patricia McFadden, passed away over the weekend, and I am sure we all send our sympathy to the Lieutenant Governor, who is out of state in Virginia at this sad time. Also, very tragically this morning, on Route 78 in this congressional district, a police officer, Matthew Tarantino, lost his life in a terrible automobile accident as an automobile from the other side of the road crossed the median. Officer Tarantino was on his way to his responsibilities as a police officer in the city of Summit. He was the head of the DARE program in Summit. He leaves behind a wife, 2 small children, and 1 child on the way. He was 29 years old. Will you please join me in a moment of silence? Thank you very much. I understand that in our audience this evening is freeholder Betty Jane Kowalski from Union County. Freeholder. I see the freeholder on many occasions, particularly at Boy Scout ceremonies. I understand Commissioner Andis Kalnins is here, Commissioner Mary O'Connor, and Commissioner Dooley. Please join me in welcoming officials from Cranford. And if there are other municipal officials whom I have not recognized, will you please raise your hand and identify yourself? Very good. Thank you. And we came through Springfield on our way here, and we did not speed in Springfield. at least not to our knowledge. I have jury duty this week, and I was at the county courthouse in Flemington, New Jersey. My wife and I live in Hunterdon County, and I was at jury duty until about 3:30 this afternoon, and I start jury duty again in the morning. I don't know whether I'd ever be chosen for a jury, but I think it's important that we fulfill our responsibility in that regard, and I intend to do that. This is my 4th town hall meeting this year. This is number 44. I hold roughly 5 town hall meetings a year, live town hall meetings, and I hold an equal number of telephone town hall meetings, and we have held 2 telephone town hall meetings in the last month or so. The other in-person town hall meetings, 2 of them have been at Raritan Valley Community College, another great community college, and they were for residents in Hunterdon and Somerset counties. Raritan Valley is a combined community college for those 2 counties, and I held a town hall meeting in person for Morris County constituents at the Mount Olive High School. We still have not had a town hall meeting out in Warren County in the western portion of the district, Phillipsburg and its environs. Certainly we want to try to cover the entire district. As you know, the district is 750,000 people. Suburban Union County, Milburn, Short Hills, and Essex, most of Somerset County, 150,000 people in western Morris, southern Warren County, and all of Hunterdon County, where we live. I want to go directly to questions. I do not have an opening statement, and we have a system, as we have used at prior town hall meetings, where I will draw tickets, and if your ticket number is drawn, we hope that you will go to the microphone to ask your question. And we're going to call 2 tickets at once to expedite the process. And our first questioner, the last 4 numbers are 2596, and the questioner after that, 2587. If your question is 2596, would you please go to the microphone? Thank you very much. And the next one is 2587. (2596). And if you would please identify yourself and indicate where you're from. And the next one is 2587. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. I'm 2587.
Very, very good. Well, thank you. Life's race goes to the swift.
My name is Jean Kryling, and I'm a resident of Cranford.
Yes.
I want to thank you very much for holding this meeting tonight.
Certainly.
I'd like to ask you where you stand on the President's budget plan, which proposes to cut Pell Grants, food stamps, Medicaid, health care, and Social Security disability.
Thank you.
President Trump also proposes to give the rich huge tax cuts and to completely eliminate the estate tax, which will richly benefit the already very rich. So if you can tell us
yes, thank you.
whether you support any of these cuts.
Thank you. Regarding the budget document, I do not support it. There are provisions. And you're certainly entitled to a longer explanation than that. The President proposes and Congress disposes. And one of President Obama's budgets was put on the board for a vote, this is several years ago, and didn't get any votes, not a Democratic vote, not a Republican vote. Budget documents tend to be statements of a blueprint as to how to move forward, but they almost never are the appropriations of funds. And the situation in Washington is different from Trenton, and I think it's confusing to the public, because in Trenton, when we talk about the budget, we talk about the appropriations of funds, and that happens at the end of June, and I'm familiar with that because I at one point chaired the Assembly Budget Committee in the New Jersey legislature. But the budget document in Washington is merely a blueprint as to how to move forward, and I think the cuts are too significant. And for example, there is a significant cut to the EPA.
Yes.
We just passed a continuing resolution to fund government for the rest of this fiscal year from a couple weeks ago to September 30th, the end of this fiscal year, and there was virtually no cut in the EPA, I think 1%.
Good.
So that is a better indication, in my judgment, of what Congress will do in appropriations of funds. Now, I think it's very important, for example, that there be funds in the budget, at least to begin the discussion on the Gateway Tunnel, which is important to New Jersey and New York. And I think the Gateway Tunnel will involve funding from the federal government, the state of New York, the state of New Jersey, the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey, as an example. I am also the Republican chair of both the Arts Caucus in the House and the Humanities Caucus in the House, and there is a Democratic chair as well. Congresswoman Slaughter is the Democratic chair of the Arts Caucus of New York, and Congressman Price of North Carolina is the Democratic chair of the Humanities Caucus in the House. And I favor continued funding of the NEH, National Endowment for the Humanities, the NEA, the National Endowment for the Arts, and the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. And,
Yes, that's very good.
having said that, the president's budget moves in the direction of trying to balance the budget in 10 years. And I do think that we have to do a better job in trying to reach a balanced budget, recognizing that the glide path is such that we're not going to have a balanced budget this year or next year. And I think some of the assumptions in the budget document we all hope that the economic growth is 3% a year, but I don't think it's necessarily going to be that high. But I want the audience to know that I certainly would like to see as strong economic growth as possible. But to answer your question, I do not favor the budget as introduced, and I do not think that it will be passed. One wonders whether any budget will be passed, and the real way the rubber meets the road is through the appropriations process, the appropriations bills for the various departments. There are 11 appropriations bills. And we in New Jersey have, as chairman of the Appropriations Committee, Congressman Frelinghuysen. He is the only New Jerseyan who chairs a major committee, and I am certain that he and I agree on the priorities I have mentioned, including the NIH, including the various cultural organizations, and including the Gateway Tunnel. Thank you for your question.
Thank you.
Is the person whom I first pulled the number, is that person in the audience? I then will go on to two more. Is this the lady whose number the next two numbers I pulled are 3471 and 9476. 3471 and 9476. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Congressman. My name is Ken Springer.
Mr. Springer.
And I live in New Providence along with my wife Judith.
Very good.
And my son and daughter-in-law recently moved into the city as well, to the town as well.
Very, very good.
I want to share the first speaker's commendation that you get up here and hold a town hall. I know it's not easy, to often hear views that may disagree with you or you may not want to hear, but I think it's very important to have an honest exchange of views. President Trump has just returned from his first visit overseas, during which he cuddled up to the autocrats in Saudi Arabia and snubbed many of our NATO allies, to one extent even shoving the leader of Montenegro out of the way to get in a picture opportunity. It seems to me that this alienation of our NATO allies and this cozying up to the Russians is just what Vladimir Putin wants to happen. And I'd like to know if you are satisfied with the direction that our foreign policy is headed in, and if not, what do you intend to do to voice your vigorous opposition?
Thank you. What I intend to do is answer your question. And regarding the president's trip, I do think that it would be wonderful if somehow peace could be brokered between the Palestinian Authority and Israel. And it's a very difficult situation, and I'm not sure that any president, particularly any new president, can bring that about. And as you know, presidents have tried. President Clinton tried, and President Bush tried, and President Obama tried.
Yeah. The question was directed toward our NATO allies.
Yes, I'll certainly answer that half of the question. Now, I favor democracy in the Middle East, and clearly Saudi Arabia is not a democracy. Israel is the only true democracy in the Middle East, ladies and gentlemen. And I am a very strong supporter of Israel. I am one of 4 co-chairs of the Israeli Republican Caucus in the House. And Israel tends not to be a partisan issue in Congress. There's very strong support for Israel on both sides of the aisle. And so I hope that we can begin the peace process anew in that region, but I don't know whether that's possible. Regarding our NATO allies, I am a strong supporter of NATO and believe in Article 5. And as I read history, NATO has been an indispensable organization, not only benefiting Europe, but benefiting us here in the United States. Now, I also think that some of our NATO allies should do a better job regarding defense spending in their countries. And there are some countries that have met the 2% goal, and of course, we meet it. But there are other countries that have not, and I hope that those countries that have not can move in the direction of 2%. Would I have stated that publicly in the principal speech I gave at NATO? I probably would have done it more privately in multilateral discussions with NATO allies. But I do think that we should encourage NATO allies to meet their responsibilities, not necessarily this year or next year, but over time. And I certainly continue to believe that the NATO alliance is indispensable. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next question. I have just spoken that I believe that what I will do is appropriate funds at the level of Congress for making sure that we meet our NATO responsibilities. The next question, yes, sir.
My name is Alan. I'm from Somerville. I just wanted to take a poll first before I ask my question. I'm assuming everybody here is in district because of the way your invitation system works. How many here are registered voters? How many are voting in the upcoming primary? So I am in district. I am a registered Republican. I vote regularly in all of these elections. Given the population here, I think that you should be concerned about some of these answers. I think the clear criminality of the current administration and lack of outcry the lack of outcry or action from the party in control of the government causes me to believe the Republican Party is becoming morally bankrupt, and I cannot see myself voting for any Republican for any office for the foreseeable future. When will you call out the president and the Republican leadership on the tax returns that should have been released? On the financial disclosures, as we see the obvious financial self-interest of the Trump family? On the obstruction, even if legal, but perhaps not ethical, of the investigation into collusion with the Russians. When will you call them out? What will it take to make a clear statement?
Thank you. I support the special counsel, Mr. Mueller. I think that that is an excellent step, and I believe that Mr. Mueller will investigate the matters that you have raised, and he will do so in a completely impartial and above-board manner. Expeditiously? And I believe that one of the challenges regarding a special counsel is that it takes some time for the investigation to get going. And this is particularly true in this situation because there'll have to be security clearances because some of these issues involve sensitive foreign matters. I thought that Rob Rosenstein, the Deputy Attorney General, his office could have handled the matter, but I was the first Republican in the nation, I believe, to say that the Attorney General Sessions should recuse himself on this matter. And I think that the fact that Rob Rosenstein appointed a special counsel, and as you know, that was done by the Deputy Attorney General in his capacity as acting Attorney General, was an example that he understands the seriousness of the situation. Now, regarding your specific concerns, I am of the opinion that the president's tax returns are likely to be subpoenaed by the special counsel. And regarding you didn't say this directly, but I think you were probably referring to the emoluments clause. Is that fair?
Yes, sir.
I am a lawyer and I have practiced constitutional law. This is the question for me. The Trump Organization, for example, I'll give you an example, owns a hotel on Pennsylvania Avenue 2 or 3 blocks from the White House. If a foreign government rents out the ballroom for an event, and if the same amount of money is paid by that foreign government for renting out the ballroom as a private entity would pay for renting out the ballroom. No more or no less. Does that violate the Emoluments Clause? That is an open question, ladies and gentlemen. And I believe that that should be decided by the Supreme Court of the United States. We have never had a decision of the Supreme Court as to whether or not the Emoluments Clause extends to a fair trade. And I don't know the answer to that. I understand and believe it's a serious question, but I would rely on the Supreme Court, and I believe a suit has already been brought in that regard. And to answer your question more generally, I criticize the president where I disagree with him. I indicate where I support him. I think that, for example, on the budget, I have indicated my position on that. On his recent trip, I've indicated my position on that. And certainly, I think that a fair and impartial investigation regarding the whole Russian situation should occur. And I think that Bob Mueller will do a superb job and let the chips fall where they may. Thank you for your question. Next question. I should pick two more, I believe. The next question is number 9471 and number 2589. 9471, 2589.
Hi.
Hello there.
Hello. I'm Ann Gilson from Springfield.
Yes, good afternoon.
Hi.
Yes, ma'am. Yes,
I'd
ma'am.
like to ask a question. How do you, what is your belief as far as climate change? And
Yes.
what are your thoughts as far as if Trump decides to leave the Paris
Yes,
Accord?
I believe climate change exists. I've stated that repeatedly. I believe that human beings are responsible, at least in part, for climate change, a significant part for climate change. And I hope, but I don't know the answer to this, I hope that the administration will not leave the Paris Agreement. And I think that Secretary Tillerson, the Secretary of State, has indicated that he's advising the president not to leave it because he wants the United States to have a seat at the table. Regarding the agreement, I would have preferred an agreement that is stronger regarding emissions from other countries, China and India, for example, and I know they have to begin to limit their emissions, and that will take some time. I think the date is 2030, recognizing that they have to begin the process. They can't begin the process in 2029. And I'm pleased that our emissions are significantly lower than they were even 5 years ago. And that is due to several reasons, not least of which is the fact that we're moving away from dirtier forms of energy, traditional fossil fuels, and I was going to say coal. I want to thank the audience for prompting me. Toward natural gas, which is a pollutant but has roughly half the pollutant qualities of more traditional forms of natural energy, fossil fuels and coal. Now, I note that PSE&G here in New Jersey announced either yesterday or this morning that it was closing down 2 coal facilities in this state. And that is a move in the right direction. So now let us assume that the president does not take the recommendation of his Secretary of State. That doesn't mean that we can't still move in the direction of greater efficiency and greater responsibility regarding the environment. I've given you my position, but even if he were to move in the other direction, that doesn't mean that we can't continue to limit pollution, and I certainly favor that.
Can I ask another question?
Of course.
Okay. What are your thoughts about the Pilgrim Pipeline, which is proposed? The permit was signed in New York State, and it's going to go from Albany through Union County.
Yes. I am opposed to it, but I have not been as vocal on it as my colleagues at the state level, State Senator Thomas Kane Jr. and State Assembly Leader John Bramnick, and I believe also Assemblywoman Nancy Munoz. And I am guided by their expertise in this area. They are all close friends of mine, and indeed Senator Kane and I share an office in Westfield, and so I oppose it. But perhaps I've not been as vocal against that as I have been against the Penn East pipeline, which is in the western portion of our congressional district. I oppose both of them, and regarding Penn East, I know that wasn't your question, but regarding Penn East, I think that it would go underneath preserved land in New Jersey, and when I was in the state legislature, I was very much involved in the protection of land under the Green Acres program, and I sponsored one of the Green Acres bills. Now, the federal agency, FERC, does not have to comply with state law, but the statute that was written in the 1930s says that the federal government should at least look to state law and try to abide by it, although it doesn't have to, and I would hope that FERC might turn it down. Thank you for your question. The next question on this side.
Thank you, Congressman Lance, and thank you for holding another town meeting. My name's Linda Engelby. I'm a resident of Bernardsville, and I'm here with my husband, Matt. With the strong hope that amidst all of the chaotic fallout that we have to deal with on a daily basis due to President Trump, I'm hoping that you and your colleagues may still have a tiny bit of energy to devote to other very important issues that are ongoing. I was also the co-chair of the Million Mom March of Somerset County many, many years ago, and am a bit discouraged that we haven't made more progress on the gun control issues. So in that regard, I would like to ask you, Congressman, to get a permit to carry a concealed weapon in New Jersey, a resident must show justifiable need. But at a previous town hall, you said that you would vote for H.R. 38, the Concealed Carry Reciprocity Act. This bill would let individuals who have a permit from other states to carry a concealed weapon in New Jersey. This undermines the rights of states, such as New Jersey's, to determine the issuance of concealed or open carry firearm permits. And many law enforcement officers and organizations have spoken out against concealed carry reciprocity. You argue that current state laws undermine the rights of gun owners in other states, but what about our rights? Why don't we get a say about what we want? Why don't we get a say about what we want in our communities and our state? Do you still support this legislation that will make New Jersey less safe? Thank you.
Thank you for your question, and thank you for your leadership on this issue. I believe at a prior town hall meeting, I expressed concern with the fact that sometimes when people from other states travel through, they're arrested, and they really are not aware of our laws. And I think that the new bill goes... I think that the new bill goes too far, and I believe that it, for example, would include school safety zones, and I don't favor that. I didn't like the situation several years ago where a man from another part of the country came to New Jersey to help after Hurricane Sandy, and he was arrested. And I don't think that was a fair situation. I do believe that these issues are best left to the state level, and the new bill goes too far for me, and I would not support the new bill. There had been previous bills in the House that I think didn't go as far as the new bill. On the Second Amendment, I believe in the Second Amendment. I also believe that what is appropriate for a state in the Rocky Mountain West might not be appropriate for New Jersey. And recently, I was one of, I think, 2 Republicans in the House of Representatives to vote against a bill that had been supported by the NRA. This is regarding veterans with significant mental challenges, veterans having the right to carry arms, and I was one of 2 Republicans not to vote for that. And I want to assure you that I would welcome working with you and your group to make sure that we are as safe as possible in New Jersey. Thank you. Our next, I'll pull 2 more. I'll pull 2 more. 9488 and 2581. 9488 and 2581. Very good. Go ahead, sir.
My name's Martin Carroll. I live in Watchung. You probably already know me because I send you about 4 faxes a day. My original question was going to be about climate change, which, as you know, or ought to know, is one of the greatest threats facing mankind. But since that question was asked already, I'm not going to ask a question. I would just like to vent a little to you. This administration is the most foul administration I have ever seen in my life. The stench that comes from Washington can be smelled in my hometown. The Republicans are showing themselves to be a bunch of spineless do-nothings. And I pledge to you that on the day President Trump leaves the White House, I will be one of the people across the street cheering and having a party.
Thank you. Your comments are similar to your emails. And I certainly hope, moving forward, that the branch of government in which I serve, the legislative branch of government, can work in a bipartisan capacity for the better interest of the American people. And this doesn't respond completely to your comment, but I favor what Mr. Mueller is doing and let the chips fall where they may. Next question. Yes. Good evening. Good afternoon.
Hi, my name is Vicki Letterman. I'm from Summit.
Yes.
On March 28, you voted for the repeal of the FCC rule protecting consumer privacy by barring internet providers from sharing data on customers' internet usage, browsing history, and geolocation information with third parties without their consent. In January 2014 and again in February 2015, in press releases, you applauded the DC Circuit Court for striking down net neutrality rules intended to keep the internet open and fair and prohibit internet service providers like AT&T, Comcast, and Verizon from speeding up, slowing down, or blocking any content, applications, or websites. The FCC received nearly 4 million consumer comments in favor of net neutrality, more than on any other issue in history. Now, robocalls and telemarketing calls are the #1 source of consumer complaints, but now the Republican National Committee, which is the fundraising arm of the RNC, wants to allow ringless voicemail, which would allow marketers to auto-dial our cell phones without them even ringing and go straight to voicemail to bombard us with unwanted pre-recorded messages. I'd like to see if there's a single person in the audience who likes that idea. How is it even a question whether people own and have control over their private information and their phones is beyond me. I am sure you can understand how it looks like you feel you owe more to the telecom industry that last year donated $43,000 to your campaign. Including $10,000 from AT&T and $10,000 from the Internet Television Association, than you do to your constituents. What are you going to do to stop the sabotaging consumer privacy and protections and control over our own lives, and to stop corporations from treating people as commodities for sale to the highest bidder? Thank you.
Thank you. I'll certainly examine the part of your question about the telephone calls, and that has not come before me.
That's a petition that only came out Friday.
Yes.
So that's not even really in the public's attention yet.
I'll certainly examine that, and that doesn't sound like a good idea to me, and I'd be happy to meet with you or others regarding that aspect of your larger question. Now, regarding your larger question, this is a dispute between two federal agencies in Washington, the FCC and the FTC. And traditionally, the internet has been governed by the FTC, not the FCC. And that's because the FCC was governing a public utility, the old-fashioned Ma Bell, and that was based upon a law, I think in the 1930s, when there was the monopoly by Ma Bell. Regarding the internet, I favor equal treatment for the internet service providers, the so-called ISPs, they would be Verizon and Comcast and others like that, and the edge providers, that would be Google and Yahoo. And I think that this should be administered by the FTC, as has traditionally been the case. And I have co-sponsored a bill with Congresswoman Marsha Blackburn that would require that both ISPs and edge providers get permission and that they be treated equally. No one in Congress is for selling private information. And the rule that was promulgated by the Obama administration in its dying days had never went into effect. And so the situation now is no different from what it was at any time, whatever.
True.
And I'm not saying that you're saying this, but some critics have said that somehow this changes where we were, and that is simply inaccurate. Regarding political contributions, I raise between $1 million and $1,200,000 every cycle, and of course, political consultants say you should raise more. I'm somewhere in the middle, probably the low middle of my colleagues. Certainly, New Jersey has a very strong telecom industry, and this district has a very strong telecom industry. It is one of the leading employers in this district. I want to assure you that I always vote my conscience. I will continue to do so. And I believe that these are matters that are best handled by the FTC, not the FCC. The FCC traditionally has been for public utilities, And I want an open internet, and the innovation that comes from that. At the moment, the United States is without doubt the leader in the globe in the internet. I want that to continue, and I think that continues best with regulation by the FTC, not the FCC.
Well, that's not what the press releases on, still to this day on your website say. They say that you hailed the DC Circuit Court for striking down net neutrality rules. That is a quote from your website. On 2 separate occasions, you've said this, January 2014 and February 2015. Because you think they shouldn't need to be regulated.
No,
and
I think
because it
they
will
should be
increase
regulated by the FTC.
competition. That's not what your website says. Because you think it will increase competition and consumer choice if they're not regulated. Being that we basically have no choice because internet providers essentially have monopolies in their areas, there is no choice. We also pay far more than any other country for worse internet access than any other country.
Thank you. I favor regulation by the FTC. Thank you for your question. Next question. Shall I pull 2 more tickets? 9485 and 9446. 9485 and 9446. Good evening.
Good evening, sir. Oh, okay, sorry. Can you hear me from there?
I can, yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. I had
And your name and where you're from.
My apologies. My name is Michael Collins. I'm from here in Cranford.
Nice to meet you, Michael.
Thank you. I had a question about taxation, and you had answered it in part earlier. I commend your support for the EPA, the National Endowment for the Arts and Humanities, and the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, but certain aspects of your answer struck me as somewhat deficient, and I was wondering if you could clarify your position on some measures in the President's budget.
Certainly.
The plan, as I read it, proposes to cut over the next decade $610 billion from Medicaid, another $192 billion from food stamps, and of particular interest to a district where over half have a bachelor's degree or higher, $33 billion from student financial assistance, and $143 billion from federal direct student loans. You said in your statement that you disagreed with certain line items in the budget, and I wonder, to what extent do you disagree with these proposed cuts?
Yes.
And
Thank you.
what is your basis for that reasoning?
Thank you. Let me talk about the Medicaid issue. You've mentioned other issues, but that certainly is one of the larger ones. New Jersey was one of those states, I think there were 31, that expanded Medicaid under Obamacare, under the Affordable Care Act. And
to our credit, I believe.
I supported that, and that was a decision by a Republican governor, Governor Christie, and a Democrat. That was a decision by a Republican governor, Governor Christie, and it was a decision by a democratically controlled legislature. And the Republican governor and the democratically controlled legislature worked together in that regard. Traditional old-fashioned Medicaid, we are reimbursed at 50%. The federal government pays 50%, we pay 50%. That's for children in poverty, pregnant women, the disabled, the blind, and senior citizens. The enhanced Medicaid under the Affordable Care Act, we get a 90% reimbursement. And that is for the working poor. And one of the reasons, not the only reason, one of the reasons I didn't vote for the recent health care legislation is that it would eliminate over time that program and I do not think that that should be eliminated for states that expanded Medicaid. And I think Governor Christie and I agree on that. The trouble is that under the Affordable Care Act, every state was to expand Medicaid. But the Supreme Court of the United States ruled that provision as being unconstitutional. So we're in the anomalous position of having some states expand it, New Jersey, 31 states in total, and then some states didn't expand it, including the very large states of Texas and Florida and other states, Virginia and North Carolina. And members of Congress from those states don't like the fact that states like New Jersey are getting a 90% reimbursement. I am for the 90% reimbursement. I favor what New Jersey did, but I'm explaining to you what a difficult challenge this is, given the fact that some large states didn't expand it, even though I obviously think they should have expanded it. And under the original legislation, they were required to expand it, but they didn't have to do that because of the Supreme Court. So I'm going to fight in that regard. And let me repeat that the budget document is not the appropriations of funds. That's done by the Appropriations Committee. And I do not believe the Appropriations Committee will follow through on the figures you have suggested. Our next question. What was the other aspect of your question, sir?
The other aspects
Yes,
were...
I don't think that we're going to be cutting the education funding as suggested in the budget document.
Or food stamps.
Or food stamps, or SNAP, yes. My position is I do not favor the budget. I believe I've indicated that. And I favor, through the appropriations process, funding for these programs, because I think they're important programs. And it is the appropriations process that is relevant, because that is how funds are appropriated in Washington.
Of course.
Thank you. Thank you.
But do you support cutting these programs to any extent?
I am unlikely to support significant cuts. That doesn't mean there can't be a 1 or 2% cut. And I do think that we have to move toward a balanced budget in this country, because we are $20 trillion in debt. And I do not want our children, I do not want our children to inherit an ever-increasing debt, recognizing that we're not going to be balancing the budget this year or next year, but I hope over time we can do a better job. Have I answered your question?
Not to my satisfaction, but yes.
You're welcome to follow up. You're certainly welcome to follow up.
I don't wish to deprive other people of their time, but...
You're welcome to follow up.
Thank you. Well, because as I recall, you first came to the House in 2008.
2009, yes.
Elected in 2008, came to the House in 2009, of course. You say you wish to balance the budget, and that is a laudable goal, but you support, as you say, cuts. But in 2008 or 2009, when you entered the House, you also signed a pledge to not raise taxes, in which case you are essentially kneecapping, from what I can see, the ability of Congress to balance the budget. It is only possible to balance the budget through cuts if you are not willing to raise taxes.
You favor raising taxes.
It seems to me not irrational to raise taxes upon those with incomes of several millions of dollars. Those who have the most to spare in our society. I don't necessarily need any more. I have taken a student loan in order to finish my graduate funding, but if I never see another red cent from the government, it doesn't bother me at all. What concerns me is the condition of people in the country at large, and they need help.
I would comment that I voted several years ago to continue the Bush tax cuts permanently for certain Americans, but not for all Americans, and the top rate went back up to 39.6%, and that affected those at the top economically, number one. Number two, when President Obama was first in office and his political party had control of both houses of Congress, I do not believe there was a suggestion that taxes should increase. And if that if that was the position of President Obama, and he never, in his 8 years, as I recall, suggested that we raise taxes, I do think, other than through the Affordable Care Act, where taxes were raised, I think that we should try to balance the budget. I'm not suggesting that we should lower taxes dramatically on those at the top in our society, and I will review any tax proposal that comes before me, recognizing that we have certain responsibilities, essential responsibilities, including in the areas that you have suggested. Our next question.
Hi, Congressman. My name is Jenny Hughes, and I'm from North Plainfield. I just want to echo the gentleman before me, his sentiment that we shouldn't be balancing the budget on the backs of the poor,
Yes.
of children, of seniors, of people who need a helping hand.
I agree.
Okay, and that I think many of us in this room are willing to pay not only our fair share, but maybe even a little bit more to give back to the communities that have benefited us. Anyway, moving on. Moving on. There's so many things that I think everybody is really interested in discussing, and I had a question about the environment and about the Paris Agreement.
Certainly.
I am also very interested in healthcare and gun control, which I hadn't even thought about for a while. But anyway, my question tonight is, I'm from North Plainfield, which has a sizable immigrant community. And so I'd like to know your
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. A sizable?
Immigrant community. You know, a number of people who are not only foreigners, but a lot of undocumented people. And their pain is real. It's serious. And in the past, you have not supported amnesty. You've been not really out in the forefront on immigration reform. And so, given the environment, the rhetoric, the nastiness, the empowerment of ICE, the threat to dreamers and innocent people who aren't doing anything but living their lives, I want to know where you stand on this, what you're prepared to do, and how you can work in Congress, maybe reaching across the aisle, to get some comprehensive immigration reform soon, because these people can't wait. They shouldn't be punished for, minor infractions. And so that's my question.
Thank you. It's a very good question, and I think we should concentrate on removing those who are not here legally, who have committed crime, and I do not think we should be concentrating on the dreamers, and I think that is the best way forward. But that doesn't answer the question of immigration reform, and I'm sure you favor comprehensive immigration reform. That's possible. I think it's more likely that the Congress will approach this piece by piece, and of course, comprehensive reform would be better. I do not favor amnesty. Now, you and I may differ in the definition of that, and certainly I do not favor removal of dreamers who came here as small children, for example. But I would like to see first, perhaps, I think I've co-signed onto a bill, and if not, I certainly support it, a bill that would permit dreamers who have volunteered and served in our military to be able to become citizens of the United States. Now, that's not. I think that's Congressman Denham's bill from California, as I recall, and I would have to look it up. I think it's Congressman Denham's bill. Now, that's
At
not.
any rate, not everyone's a dreamer. So
Yes.
for the other people who are here that aren't doing anything wrong, no serious criminal, background, what's their solution? What are we going to do for them?
I certainly don't favor deportation in that situation, and. A compromise might be some sort of legalization, but not citizenship, for those who are not here legally. And
Like a light green card or something?
I think it would be of a different color. I think it would indicate that the person is here legally, but not grant that person citizenship. And that.
Okay, but why? Why can't we just go all the way if they're not doing, like, if they're contributing to society and paying taxes and their kids are going to school and they're just living their lives? Why not a green card? What's the big deal? What's the big holdup?
There are many people who are waiting patiently in line, following the rules, who want to come into this country, and that is my view on this issue.
Why can't they get in line?
And certainly those who are here illegally can get in line. Yes, I favor their getting in line. And I do not favor deportation of dreamers, and I've indicated my position. I will draw one more card. The hour is up, but I'll draw another card. 3476. The lady over here suggests 20 questions.
20 questions.
I suggest one, but yes, sir. Your name, your name, and where you're from.
Thank you for taking my question.
Certainly.
My name is Bill Tharr. I'm from Summit, New Jersey.
Yes, sir.
And I'm a retired physician.
Physician, medical doctor.
Yes.
Doctor.
And so my question is about health care.
Yes.
How many of you here are over 65? Thank you. You are all part of a single-payer healthcare system. That's called Medicare. Medicare happens to be twice as big as Canada's entire system. It's about the same size as the English National Health Service. It's a little smaller than France's healthcare system and a little smaller than Germany. We actually know how to do this. Now it's really embarrassing to see Congress stumbling around trying to figure out what to do with healthcare. When we already know. We've done this for over 50 years. It's one of the most successful programs in the United States. It operates more efficiently than any private health insurance company. Its overhead costs are about 2%. It represents universal coverage for everyone over 65. And when I turned 65, I was not only relieved, I wondered why everyone else didn't have this. Now, I've never figured out why we haven't made Medicare universal and improved it. I wonder why my granddaughter can't have access to this wonderful healthcare system. I wonder why we have to create different systems for different parts of our population. Why we have to relegate the poor to one system, the veterans to another system, the elderly to another system, and the employed to a private health insurance system. There have been over 20 studies that show that universal health care using Medicare would save us money, ensure everyone in the country, raise benefits, all at the same time of not costing us a penny more than we're spending right now. So it makes absolutely no sense. So my question is, would you support universal health care using a model based on Medicare and improving that model as we move ahead?
About 170 million Americans receive their health care coverage through employment. This does not mean that they necessarily are personally employed. It could be a spouse, and it includes, of course, minor children. 170 million Americans. About 50 million Americans or so receive their health benefits through Medicare, as you have explained, and about 70 million Americans receive health care coverage through Medicaid. And if we were to reinvent the wheel, perhaps we would move in the direction you have suggested. When President Obama was first in office and the Democratic Party controlled both houses of the federal Congress, there was... There was not enough support for the single-payer system. And so, I do not favor a single-payer system. I favor building on the system we have, doctor. And
part of the system we have is, works very well. The interesting thing is, since World War II, we've had sort of an international experiment. That is, all the wealthy democratic countries in the world, except one, that's ours, decided to implement their form of universal health care with strong government intervention. At the end of this experiment, we end up with a health care system that costs twice as much and provides care that's on average sort of in the middle of all those other countries. It seems our experiment has really failed. The one system that seems to resemble what has been successful in other countries is Medicare. It's a system that's already implemented, that has large participation of physicians across the country, could be implemented very easily because the administrative structure is already there, and then we could work together to improve it. So why can't we move ahead on that?
Do you favor requirement of physicians to participate?
I would favor a requirement for physicians to participate, yes.
Do you agree with me that that would be very difficult to achieve and that it would be opposed by the American Medical Association?
Actually not. Physicians, a majority of physicians actually approve of single-payer health care. And we've seen a movement, especially in the last year, toward single-payer health care and several articles that actually support the implementation of single-payer health care.
I do not think it's likely, and I certainly would be willing to analyze any facts to the contrary. I do not think that that would be supported by the AMA. I think the AMA...
Well, the AMA represents about 15 to 20% of physicians. It's actually a very small part of our community.
And other physicians are represented by their
specialty groups. So groups like the American Academy of Family Physicians, the American Academy of Pediatrics, and several other groups have supported single-payer health care. I'm a part of a physician group called Physicians for a National Health Program, which has over 15,000 members who also support single-payer health
I'll
care.
be happy to review any literature you can send to my office.
I'd like to sit down and talk to you about that.
Absolutely, Doctor. I do.
It's also one of the best ways to redistribute wealth in the country by providing a broad base of healthcare support for the entire population.
I certainly want to improve the healthcare situation in this country. I think that we spend too much percentage of GDP on it. I'm not convinced we should go to a single-payer system, but I'll be happy to sit down with you, Doctor, and I commend you for your question.
I'll give your office a call.
Thank you. I want to thank all of you for being here this evening. I think it's very public-spirited. I'll take one more question. And the question is from number 9452. Are you 9452, ma'am?
No. Yes.
The question
She gave it to me.
The question is from number 9452.
There you go. Okay. 949. She got me. Okay. There you go. Okay. She gave me her ticket.
The next question is from 9.
I got it.
No, I gave
It
her
was
one
her. She
9452.
yeah. Okay. Okay. I'm actually I'm Kathy Sheridan, and I'm from here in Cranford. I would like to share my Planned Parenthood story. Okay? Because I don't think Congress has any idea what Planned Parenthood really does. Okay? I am a DES daughter. My mother was given the synthetic hormone diethylstilbestrol when she was pregnant with me in order to prevent her 9th miscarriage. DES daughters were later found to have a higher risk of cervical cancer. I have never had a normal pap smear. My doctor, as well as the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists and the American Cancer Society, recommended that I have a pap smear every 3 months. But my insurance company would only pay for one a year. So I went to Planned Parenthood in Flemington for the other 3. It was the pap smear after my annual exam that detected cancer. I was able to have minimally invasive surgery to remove the cancerous cells. Think about that. 3 months prior, I had no cancer. If I had had to wait another year, the cancer would have been more advanced. And had I survived, I might never have been able to have children. 32 years later, I can still say that Planned Parenthood saved my life and the lives of my 2 children.
Thank you. Thank you. I'll be happy to respond to that. We recently passed the continuing resolution that funds the government for the rest of this year.
Yeah.
And that included funding for Planned Parenthood.
The government doesn't fund Planned Parenthood. The government reimburses Medicaid to Planned Parenthood, just like they do to other physicians who accept Medicaid.
I was going to continue. that
Go
I
ahead.
was one of the Republicans who voted for that.
Okay.
And there were more than 100 Republicans who voted against it.
Yes, I know.
And so I voted several weeks ago for funding for the government for the rest of the year. That includes funding for Planned Parenthood for services such as the services you have indicated. It does not include abortions.
Right, the government doesn't provide any money for
Now, regarding that issue, and that issue was raised, we have in this country what is known as the Hyde Amendment. The Hyde Amendment has been in place for 41 years, since 1976. The Hyde Amendment prohibits federal funds for the abortion procedure.
Yes.
I favor the Hyde Amendment. How many, and this is interactive.
Okay.
How many in the room favor the Hyde Amendment? How many in the room are on the other side of this important issue and oppose the Hyde Amendment? Mm-hmm. I beg your pardon, young man?
Everyone in here, you represent us.
Mm-hmm. This is. I think this, ladies and gentlemen, I think this is an issue where I may disagree with the majority of those in this room. I favor the Hyde Amendment that prohibits federal funding for the abortion procedure. It has been.
But you are supposed to represent the constituents. We don't represent you. You represent us. She has a right as a minority to be pro-life, and it shouldn't be called pro-life or pro-choice anyway. But you said you vote your conscience. But this whole room is your constituents, and we're telling you what our conscience is, and you're saying, well, I disagree. Well, then I guess as a CEO, you should go. Because if you like Apple, but you work for Microsoft, you shouldn't be there.
The overwhelming, I believe
Okay.
I believe that a majority of my constituents.
Okay.
I'm not speaking about.
My question is not about the Hyde Amendment. My question is, why does the federal government think that they should not provide Medicaid reimbursements to Planned Parenthood while they do provide Medicaid reimbursements to other physicians who accept Medicaid patients who also may provide abortions? But because they're not vocal about it, nobody's questioning other doctors.
I have indicated my position by voting the way I did several weeks ago that continues the Planned Parenthood funding for non-abortion services, including the very important, the critical services that you indicated were so very important.
Will you try to convince the 100 other congressmen to see your way?
I try to lead by example, and certainly I hope that I try to lead by example, and certainly I hope that others will share my point of view. But I do support the Hyde Amendment, and I do not think the Hyde Amendment is likely to change anytime soon. Now, I want to thank everybody for participating this evening. I think it's very public-spirited that you were here. Thank you for coming, and it's an honor to represent you in Congress. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.